Swimming Upstream episode 60 with one of the Marlins' newest call-ups, actually. It's play-by-play broadcaster from the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp and director of broadcasting and media relations, Scott Kornberg. Scott, we appreciate you being here as always. Before we get to you, we got to mention that the show is sponsored by MPT College Consulting. With that said, let's go. Scott, thank you so much. We definitely appreciate your time. What's up, man?
Guys, thank you. That doesn't get old, hearing new call-up. It's still a couple weeks later, and it's still an amazing feeling.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate your time. It was a pleasure to listen to you and Kyle do your thing, and Steven as well. Man, we want to talk about that. We want to talk about some Jacksonville-centric stuff, what's going on down there, and just some Marlins-specific questions about what's coming in the future for Miami. So first one we got for you, man. Me and Kev will go ahead. First one we got for you, like we said, make your MLB debut in the regular season. You've done some spring training games, and you get a pretty exciting game. You get an Otto Lopez walk-off, so kind of poetic. You've gotten to know Otto pretty well since the Marlins signed him. He's been in AAA. They call him up a little bit before they call you up, and then he walks the game off. So pretty cool. We know how you kind of got the call. The Marlins made a video about it with Kyle trying to like trick you and stuff. So it was pretty fun. And then your reaction was great. So just tell us about the experience as a whole, like getting that phone call, and then the game itself. Like overall, what was your experience like?
Amazing. And I came in with high expectations. Right at your major league debut, you expect it to be amazing. And I remember sitting in the broadcast booth, 8th or 9th inning. So the game was not close at this time, and just thinking to myself, wow, I just wish this day would go a little bit longer. I wish this game would go a little bit longer. And it was like the baseball gods were like, ask and you shall receive. And they did an incredible comeback. And first off, I have to tip my cap to Kyle Seeloff, Steven Strom, John Eric Alvarez, Marlins in general, because they didn't have to ask me to do this game, and they did. And Kyle didn't have to give me the innings that he did, certainly not the 10th inning. Like he did. So all in all, just between the game, the way I was treated by the Marlins, the Otto Lopez actually signed a ball for my son, 4-year-old, before the game. I don't think he knew it was my kid, but he did. And everything was amazing. And so I think that like the baseball gods were like, here, Otto, you get the walk off. And then to me, for whatever reason, it was like a fairy tale this entire day. And I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, for sure. Just talk to us a little bit about Otto. It's a guy who the Marlins claimed off of waivers. He comes to Jacksonville. He scorches the ball, hitting over, I think, 500 for you guys with a 291 WRC plus, comes to Miami. And he's been a guy who has been hard to take out of the lineup, to say the least. He's been one of the best players on this team since he got called up. What did you notice about Otto in Jacksonville that maybe has now translated to the major league level?
Well, I know it hasn't necessarily been a banner season for the Marlins at the major league level, but these are the kind of acquisitions that I think should get the fan base excited about, because he was completely discarded by the Giants. And the Marlins said, we have 6 years of team control with this guy. Hey, he's a really talented player. Why not? And those are the moves on the margins. Like, is he a starter going forward? Possibly. He's played really, really well. At the very least, he could play everywhere on the diamond. He runs the bases really well. Clearly, he's made some adjustments hitting-wise. It speaks to his hard work. It speaks to his character. It speaks to the culture that this front office wants to kind of build. And he's an A-plus guy. He's got a really cool backstory, as I'm sure you guys know, having been born in the Dominican Republic and leaving everything behind even earlier than most people to go live in Canada, and then going back to the DR. So I think between everything he's accomplished in his career and the fact that versatility, I mean, that's so important. And the fact that he's still really young and clearly getting better and better and better. To me, it's a significant pickup, and I think it excites you. I know that this season hasn't been great up until recently when they played really well, 4 consecutive series wins, but they're trying to build up not just the 40-man, but really thinking of the organization as, 60, 80 people that you're going to need to get through a season. And these are the kind of moves that nobody bat an eye when the Marlins claimed him off waivers. And yet, as you guys said, he's playing a significant role for this team. It's awesome to see because he's a great dude.
And then also just want to ask about the state of this current Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp team. You guys are under 500, but still a lot of nice individual performances from a lot of guys. Just take us through your season so far.
Got off to a very good start. They were within a game and a half of first place on April 29th. So literally a month into the season, they were playing really well and just hit this horrible rut in which they got swept by Scranton Wilkes-Barre. They lost 5 out of 6 at Omaha. They then lost 4 out of 6 to Nashville and the first 2 games of our series last week to Gwinnett. So 17 losses in 20 games. In those 20 games, they'd only scored 75 runs. But the talent is far better than that. And we were kind of waiting for that to happen. They did win the last 4 games of the series in Gwinnett to win that series going into this week against the Durham Bulls. So I don't know if they were as good as they were to start this season. They certainly aren't as bad as they were to lose 17 out of 20 the way they did, and it just seemed like nothing was going right. But pitching-wise, there's interesting pieces here. You guys have seen Roddery Muñoz already. He keeps getting better and better. He threw 8 scoreless innings on Sunday. Yanni Chirinos has had a spectacular season here, 2.68 ERA. He had 8 innings start on Saturday. And Elvis Alvarado is somebody who's really kind of pushing himself on the radar. If you look at his numbers, they're not amazing, but he just had 1 or 2 bad outings in Memphis. And other than that, he's like unhittable. He's 98 to 100 with the fastball. He's got a ridiculous slider. He does throw a changeup, and they really wanted to work on him just simplifying his get rid of the windup, simplify everything, because there's a lot of moving parts and it was difficult to repeat. In the last month, he's been so good. Obviously, Anthony Maldonado is back here, and he's been tremendous. So the pitching, there's pieces here that I think could help and will help the big league team as early as this year. And then offensively, Troy Johnston got off to a really rough start. He's starting to pick things up this week. And your positives would be Victor Mesa Jr. is amazing. What a player. Jonah Bride has been amazing here in AAA. Griffin Conine and Javier Sanoja have been really hot. So there are things here that are happening. I don't think it's like a championship-worthy team, but I don't think that they are near the bottom. I think this is a team that should be the top half of the International League.
Yeah, we'll go into a couple more of a couple of those guys that you mentioned. We'll go into them a little bit more in depth in a bit. But I did want to ask you one more thing about just the broadcasting side of things. We have a lot of people that listen that would love to do what you do for a living, because you get to watch baseball and talk about baseball for a living, which is an amazing job as it is. But I did want to ask you about just the differences between what you do in Jacksonville. Of course, you have the role not only as broadcaster, but you're also media relations director. Whereas when you made the trip to Miami, you're just doing broadcasting, but it is a much larger stadium. There's a lot more involved with getting around and stuff like that. There's a bit more involved with maybe your preparation and stuff like that. So the question is, how, if at all, how were things different from AAA to the majors when you did that game with Kyle and Steven?
I think you nailed it. And that all I had to worry about was the broadcast. And that is so abnormal for me, because normally I'm doing our game notes and I'm doing interview requests and roster moves. And I also do sales here. So I do corporate sales and group sales and season ticket sales. So I have a lot of different clients I have to touch base with, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of with an amazing experience. So I didn't have to do any of that, though, in Miami. I just had to show up, go up to the broadcast booth, talk to whoever I wanted to talk to that day, obviously whatever things I wanted to look up. And that was really cool. But I'm really grateful for this job because it's taught me so many skills that I think are really helpful no matter where you are. I think it's important to be able to write and to be able to articulate your thoughts that way. I think it's important to be able to obviously interact with people, whether they're low level, people who just buy flex plan vouchers, or whether they spend thousands and thousands of dollars. I think that's important to be able to relate to fans and just people in general, because relationships are the biggest part of this job. So it was very weird to just go there and only worry about the broadcast. That was amazing. And not even worry about here I just got back and had to set up our equipment again because we were on the road last week. The Marlins and the major leagues, there's somebody for that. And so it was different. It was amazing. I would love to be able to do it more than just once. I'm really grateful for just that one day. If that's all it is, entirely worth it. But it's such a different thing. People don't grasp the fact that it's not just the broadcaster here. There's like 9 roles that I have, but I think it's made me a better employee, and I think it's made me hopefully a better teammate, and obviously I think a better worker, because I feel at the pinnacle of all these different skills having worked there. And then to have one day in the majors, I was really pleasantly surprised with how much I got to research in advance. I knew about this game in advance. I was doing stuff several weeks ahead, but B, even the day of, that normally I wouldn't have time for, that I hopefully think paid off for people listening in on May 18th.
Yeah, definitely did. And I think everyone wants to know, obviously you had the walk-off call. How would you grade your call?
Overall, I would give myself a B. The walk-off, I think, pretty good. The funny part about that was Christian Bethencourt on third. He slipped me up a little bit there because he went about as slow as you could when the game is guaranteed to be won from third base to home plate. So I just wanted to make sure, right? That's a key of broadcasting, is you don't want to say something that you're assuming or anticipating. You have to make sure.
Here's the pitch. Line shot up the middle, base hit. Bethencourt scores, Marlins win 10-9, an extraordinary come-from-behind victory. Otto Lopez, a ground ball through the middle, and the Miami Marlins down by 5 in the 7th inning and 4 in the 9th have won 10-9 in 10.
I felt really great. I think it speaks to A, the comfort level that the Marlins gave me, B, hopefully the prep, C, everybody must feel this way talking with Kyle Seeloff and Steven Strom. I mean, what 2 incredible gems of people who are so easy to work with. I bet all the people who are like them are like, man, I have great chemistry with them. And I feel like that, but it speaks to just the quality of people that they are. They're amazing. And the last, I think, small part of this is I grew up a Mets fan, and my dad is still a Mets fan. My brothers, sister, mom, not really a baseball fan, but would identify as baseball, as Mets fans. And so I still read about the Mets. And it wasn't like they were playing a team that we don't see here in AAA. We don't really play Syracuse. We played them 2 years ago, but I do follow them along. So I know what's going on with the Mets. Whereas for the Rockies or the A's or teams A, not in our league, and B, kind of more in the periphery of what's going on in baseball, that would have been more of a challenge prep-wise. But I felt pretty good about the Mets and knowing where they're at and some of the good things going on with their team, and obviously some of the not so good things going on with their team.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you mentioned the Jumbo Shrimp off to a really rough start of May, at least. But how do you kind of maintain that positivity on your broadcast, knowing that, maybe they aren't having the greatest success on the field, but definitely stuff to maintain some sort of positivity? You kind of mentioned some of the individuals that have really maybe brought a jolt of energy to this team, like Victor Mesa Jr. or Javier Sanoja, who have been some of the more fun prospects to watch in this system this year.
When I was young in my career, I don't remember who told me this, but I remember this piece of advice more than anything I've ever gotten, was people like hearing about people. And so, yes, it's the most important thing as a broadcaster to be able to not be able to, but to actually tell people what's going on, right? But I work for the Jumbo Shrimp. They pay my salary. I travel with our guys on the plane or the bus or in the hotel. I get to know them, their families, their spouses really well. I'm not here to bury them. I can't do what they do on the field, even close to that level. And so it's not fair for me to sit up there, and if we're not playing well, I do have to say the facts, and I think they know that. But I'm not going to harp on, if somebody makes an error or someone has a not great performance or they're 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. We've seen all that this year. But I think through that, I think hopefully my style for people who have listened, either with the Marlins last week or to Jacksonville games or even before that, is people like hearing about people. And what ways can our fans relate to our players based on maybe something they've overcome in their life, or maybe their favorite restaurant, or something they like to do in their spare time. And so, yeah, they haven't played great, but I don't think I think that's part of the job, is to say, okay, the Jumbo Shrimp have lost for the 17th time in 20 games. But if I just spent 9 innings just butchering the team because their offensive stats are this and that, wouldn't be a very entertaining thing. And so you have to find ways to keep people engaged, to make people entertained. And I like to think that I do an okay job at that by getting to know our players really well, building those relationships, and gaining their trust to be able to tell their story. And I think anybody who would tune in, whether we're playing great or not, they would hear stories about not just our players, but the other players on the Durham Bulls this week or the Charlotte Knights next week, because I just think people enjoy hearing about that stuff more so than burying people that it's not fair for me to do that anyway.
Yeah, I think like you said, being analytically driven and mentioning stats and wins and losses, like, you know, especially like major league level or more advanced levels, I guess I should say, is important. But the storytelling aspect is equally important. Hearing those little nuances that happen kind of behind the scenes and stuff like that is always fun to hear, and creates conversation, right? So I think it's a really important aspect of broadcasting that the best ones do, including yourself. So it's great. You already mentioned some standouts. Like I said, we'll get to some of those, just what you've thought about them so far here this season. The first one that I have for you, I don't think we mentioned him yet, but I'm going to mention him now, is Max Meyer. So Max Meyer started the season with the Marlins. They sent him down after just a few starts. It was not a very popular move. A lot of fans were upset. He was doing very well with the Marlins. With the Jumbo Shrimp, they are innings limiting him, it seems, to like 3-4 a start, or maybe pitch limiting. Maybe you could tell us that. After his Tommy John, of course. So, I mean, the stats don't look great, but what have you seen out of Meyer since he's been back?
Yeah, and you, first of all, thank you for the kind words a couple minutes ago, but you, I think, hit it in that it was not a popular move, and I also think it was not a popular move with him. Understandably so. He had dominated the major league level, and in his mind, he's saying, well, why am I going back to AAA? But there were things for him, are still things for him to work on. And he started really slow. And I think he almost looked at it as, okay, I've dominated the major leagues. I'm just going to show up to Jacksonville and I'll dominate there. And that's not how it worked out. And it took a little bit, I think, from our coaching staff to kind of get to him and say, when you go back up, because it is a when for him, he's a super talented pitcher and he is starting to pitch much better. It's not an on-off switch. You can't just not work on anything down here and expect to find success again in the majors. And that involves, you know, in our pitching coach, Jeremy Powell, in his words, literally this weekend when I interviewed him, his changeup, which everybody knows, and his arm side fastball, which I think most people know about that. And so the innings limit is 3 unless it's a really low pitch count. They have not let him go past 74 pitches, so I'm guessing that it's a 75 pitch count for him if he gets into the fourth. So they're being really conservative about it, but I think understandably so, he struggled mentally with getting optioned down here. And once that message started to hit home, and you heard Skip Schumacher's comments about it earlier this week, and he said something similar. Darren Brown, the Jacksonville manager, said something similar. Jeremy Powell said something similar, that once they've gotten through about, hey, you still have to do the work here, and he is as hardworking of a player as you'll ever find. But once he got over that, hey, I'm option thing, it has been night and day, the results. Last 2 starts have been fantastic, and the stuff is obviously still there. The competitiveness is really still there, and I would like to think it's a short amount of time for him to get where he needs to be to go back up there. I don't have any answers on that, but I would feel really encouraged with, for Marlins fans who maybe looked like a couple weeks ago and were like, his ERA is 9 something in AAA, that he has looked considerably better the last couple times out.
Yeah, for sure. So just kind of getting over that mental aspect of, okay, I'm back here and I got to deal with it as best as I can. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Hopefully we see him back by the end of the season. Hopefully we'll see what happens with him. You talked about another guy just before with Roddery Muñoz. Is the next guy we wanted to ask you about. Rough start to the season statistically, but his last two starts, including his most recent one, have been pretty good. Numbers are starting to come down. ERA wise, whip wise, looks good. Control numbers seem to be coming up. 8-inning shutout. You can't ask for much more. What's been the deal lately with Muñoz? What's the improvements you've seen with him?
It's interesting because the improvement started in the major leagues. So he was with us to start the year and really had struggled. And he got the call up, and he was great. Like in 2 of those 3 outings, the Dodgers obviously hit him around a little bit. But I think for him, his stuff is outstanding, right? And I think it was something where, okay, how do you repeat this one where his stuff would be there at points in the game, and then it would just be a lot of walks, or he'd be pitching in the middle of the plate and get hit around. And so they wanted to work on some things to get his delivery repeatable. The other thing was, hey, you don't have to strike everybody out. You have an amazing fastball. You have a great slider. You have all the pieces, but you don't need to strike everybody out. And that's what I think was so encouraging about Sunday, was he went 8 innings and he only struck out 3. And normally you would say, well, that's, you want more swings and misses, but he got swings and misses. It's just that he also didn't overcompensate and then hurt himself in the process with a lot of walks. He only walked 2. He wasn't hit hard the entire game. I think he only allowed 3 hits actually the whole time out. So I think with Muñoz, it was almost a confidence thing, B, a repeatability thing, but C, a mental thing. Is like, you've got all the tools, but also trust everybody behind you. And there will be games where he piles up strikeouts for sure, especially at this level. But really encouraging, because I think in the beginning of the year, he was all over the map, and it was because his mechanics would be out of whack. And Jeremy Powell is a terrific pitching coach at this level, where you saw a lot of guys who, like Ryan Weathers, for example, really fix things here before going to the majors. And with Muñoz, it's the same thing. I think with Max Meyer, it's the same thing. There's a few others, who have been the beneficiary of that. And I think it's a combination of all those things. But I mean, really, really, there's a lot of guys who are really impressive pitching wise, but hadn't seen anything like that in a long time. And he was fantastic on Sunday.
And he's just 24, which is the best part of it. So still young, still close to the prime of his career. He still has a long way to go, and he could be someone who could definitely help the Marlins out, as soon as today at the major league level. So definitely a guy who we're really excited about. And, another guy at Fish on First we're super excited about is Victor Mesa Jr. We have him ranked as our top position player prospect. Feels like one of the more electric players in this system. Such a fun guy. You had him recently on your podcast, the Turn 2 podcast with Troy over there. Just talk to us a little bit about Victor Mesa Jr. And do you think he's major league ready?
I think he's pretty close to major league ready. But I think what separates him, and this is to those other intangibles that are really important in building a culture and an organization. He's only 22. I want to preface this by saying he is not the youngest guy in our team, but he is very close to the youngest guy in this team. And oftentimes, probably even in the major leagues, there's little cliques in the clubhouse, and it's guys from America, and there's another clique with guys from Latin America. And he is the rare player, in particular, 22 years old, to be able to blend into any environment with any group of people and just fit in. And that's with guys there's people who are 10 years older than him on this team. And he's able to relate to them. There are people from areas of the country that he's never been, and he's able to relate to them. And then, of course, we have a huge Latin population. He is the leader of that part of the clubhouse, to the point where when Javier Sanoja got called up here, first time in AAA, when Christian Rodriguez got called up here, first time in AAA, he was the guy putting his arm around them. And like, even in the airport, like, hey, this is what you do here. This is what we do, to prepare for games and watch video. That stuff is so valuable, in addition to the fact that he's a heck of a player. They have challenged him. Can he play center field? They love what he's done in center field. They have said, can he lead off? Which I don't know if he loves leading off, but they want to see him do it. And he's answered that call. And he's hit for power. He had the ankle injury to begin the season, which I think kind of slowed him on the bases in the beginning, but I think he's starting to feel more comfortable there. But he's shaved his strikeout rate going from AA to AAA by 4 percentage points to this point of the season, which is fairly significant, 23% to 19%. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're going up a level and when you're one of the youngest players at that level, that is huge. So I think there's still a few things to iron out here or there, but every time they have a question and they challenge him, he answers that. And then you have the intangibles beyond that. This guy is really, truly a special, not just player, but I think person. And I'm really excited for him to get that shot. I'm hoping at some point later this year.
Yeah, he's been fabulous. And it started in spring training. He was doing the same stuff in spring training too. Like he fits right in, and even in the big league clubhouse, he fits in there. So I think he's going to be ready pretty soon, hopefully. And we always say definitely I guess what we should say and how we should label it is definitely the closest thing that the Marlins have in the minors to a true defensive center fielder. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're excited about him. You mentioned just before the youngest player on this team, so I want to talk about him. A good segue for that. Javier Sanoja, who the Marlins did challenge pretty early this season to be in AAA, and it doesn't seem like he's lost really anything from what he was doing previously in his minor league career. Never strikes out, doesn't hit for power, but gets on base in other ways, and then has pretty good speed on the bases and plays literally everywhere. So we like Sanoja a lot, despite very little power. Maybe he could come by more of that as he grows because he's still just 21. But, man, his patience at the plate and selectiveness is just so awesome. We really like him with how advanced he is at a young age. So that's our thoughts. I want to get your thoughts on Sanoja and what you've seen from him.
He's almost like Otto Lopez to me. Plays everywhere. He doesn't – Otto Lopez hits for far more power than Sanoja has, at least to this point. But I think contact is important. Nowadays, there's so many people striking out over and over and over again. And I think it's important to have at least some people on your team that they're going to be a tough plate appearance every time they come up. That they're going to put the ball in play because you never know what's going to happen as long as you just get it in play. So he started in AAA really rough. He was 6 for 39. I think it's a 154 average. But of those 39 at bats, only 2 of those were strikeouts. So I think even here, new level, he was able to still get contact in the ball, which was encouraging, which I know is part of his game, but it would be really not encouraging if he came here when 6 for 39 and was striking out way more than he had in the past. So they worked with him. I did an interview with him last week, and they really worked with him on his top hand. He was really honest about that in terms of some of the adjustments he had made. But I think for Sanoja, he's now reached base in 16 of his last 17 games. I think he has hits in 14 or 15 of those, and he's batting .390 around that during that span. So he's clearly, whatever mechanical adjustment he was working on with Greg Colburn, the Jumbo Shrimp hitting coach, he's a very hard worker. The base running, I think, still needs to be refined a little bit for a guy who's got his speed. He doesn't steal bases at a super high clip. Like he was 37 for 59 last year. And this year, his percentage is not really, I think, where you'd want it to be. But defensively, he's good wherever you put him. And the contact stuff, he's only swinging and missing 3.8% of the time, which of the 184 players in the International League with at least 100 plate appearances, that is the 3rd lowest. So there's something there. Whether he becomes a utility guy, I think he's a major league player just because of the versatility and the contact alone. Can he add a little bit more power is the question, because he does hit the ball hard, but it's more like line drives and ground balls.
Yeah, he's someone who's a really interesting player, and the speed definitely helps, and the defense is good. It's not he's better at one spot than the other. He's really good center fielder and he's a really good shortstop. So it definitely makes his case a lot better to be one of the younger guys to come up to do this system and, hopefully reach the major league level one day. But going, to your podcast partner, Troy Johnston, he's gone off to a little bit of a struggle, but he's really picked it up as of late, and we're starting to see the Troy Johnston remember. Just talk to us a little bit about what you've liked from Troy, maybe what you saw at the start of the season that he's improved on now in this latter end of the season.
Well, I know Troy would tell you this too. He is a big feel guy in terms of what he sees at the plate. And so him missing time in the spring, it's interesting. Everybody's got different off-season stuff, but he doesn't want to touch a bat for a long time. And he needs spring training then, I think, to feel in flow and feel in rhythm and get his feel down where he wants it to be. And I think him missing time in the spring really kind of set him back. And so it morphed into him maybe pressing a little bit, trying to do too much. And credit to Darren Brown for giving him what Troy called a mental health day last week in Gwinnett. And he had been in another slump, 7 for 45. He gets Thursday off, comes back Friday, gets a hit, comes back Saturday, gets 3 hits, including a home run, in which he had not homered in more than a month at that time, 105 at bats, I believe it was, and then had another couple hits, I believe, on Sunday. So I think, he needed a day just to clear his head. We've had so few position players on our team this year that when the lineup card is posted, there's the 9 people batting, and then there's only 2 people on the bench, one of which is your backup catcher. So there's not a lot of off days. And I think that has affected him and other players here. And to get that day off was huge. And I think he's starting to feel, which is a huge factor for him, where he was close last year. Because even when he was going through some good games earlier this year, he still said, I don't feel good. Like he was very honest and upfront about that. But I really think this week he's turned the page a little bit, and it's shown over the weekend. Hopefully it will sustain itself. It's a tough pitching team. Anytime you play Durham, they have Shane Baz going tonight. But I do think he feels a little bit better.
I wanted to ask you real quick as a follow-up before we get to our next guy. Kevin mentioned Turn 2 podcast, which, of course, you guys started doing just a little bit ago. What's this experience been like? What made you guys want to do this? Why partnering with Troy was the right call to make? And, also how you guys formulate shows, because it's not just Marlins prospects that you guys are getting. You guys are getting other guys. You guys had Owen Cassie. You guys had Rumfield. You guys had a lot of these other guys on from other teams. So when you're thinking about how you're formulating a show and how you want to go with the show, what's the thought process behind what's really the mission that you want to accomplish with the show?
Well, guys, first off, thank you both. You guys have been super supportive of that, and that is really cool. I had the idea. I knew I wanted to do a podcast because I listened to you guys, and it's really good. And I didn't want it to just be me or even Matt Davis, our other broadcaster, and I thought there could be a new idea. And then I kind of thought this was a months-long thing. And finally one day it hit me, and nobody does a podcast with a current player. Or maybe somebody does, but at least I haven't seen it. And Troy is a great dude. I literally just texted him in November, and I was like, does this sound interesting at all? I think you'd be really good at it. You're a great talker. You can give things on the inside part of the game that I can't do. I'm not in the clubhouse, besides a little bit, but you're between the lines. And he was all about it. So we would be on the phone every week for hours a week, texting back and forth. What about this idea? What about that idea? And trying to formulate what we wanted. And I think in the off season, we wanted it to be sort of we didn't want to have guests, obviously, but we wanted it to be a little bit of banter between the two of us. Whereas during the year, there's not a ton of time. And so we just figured, let's just bring on whoever we want to bring on. And we're playing against some of these guys. And I don't think that because we're a Marlins broadcaster, affiliate broadcaster, or a Marlins player, that there's other stories. Again, this kind of goes in line with what we were talking about earlier. there's other stories to tell. Like Owen Casey, Troy had come upon him at I forget where, but he had known him, and he was like, this guy's really good. And TJ Rumfield, we couldn't get him out all week. We tried to jinx him on the podcast. It didn't work. He hit 2 or 3 home runs, but he's got a really interesting background. And so we thought we do want to do a lot of Jumbo Shrimp guys. That is borne out with Patrick Monteverde and Victor Mesa Jr., who were both fantastic. But how do we branch out and continue to tell just cool stories across baseball, just as a player and a broadcaster, just with the different perspectives that we bring? And so we do think we have an old friend in the awning this week. You could probably guess a former Jumbo Shrimp player on the Durham Bulls, who we have to talk to still about this, but I am hopeful that he'll say yes, because he's a great dude. But Troy is great at this, and there's very limited. I think he wants to be coached, but there's not a ton that I need to teach him on. It's just, he's a really good person. He does great prep. That was one thing I was kind of curious. Like, is he just going to rely on things that, because he plays, that he can ask about? And he does, obviously, because I don't see some of these things that he's coming from. But he puts in a lot of work into this, and that has been really fulfilling, is that I know every time we do a show that he's doing his homework, that I don't have to carry the brunt of that relationship, and we trade different notes and different ideas. So it has been a lot of fun. He loves it, which makes me very happy. I think he's great at it, and we hopefully could do our small share of the podcasting universe and coming at it with a couple different perspectives that I just didn't think existed maybe before it.
Yeah, and I was talking to Alex when you guys first put out that you guys were going to do this. I was telling him it's cool and it's unique because you don't see this too often. You don't see the player broadcaster type podcast, and it's definitely cool. I've tuned into most of them, and it's definitely been something I've enjoyed, adding to my day whenever I get the chance to.
At MPT College Consulting, they pride themselves on helping clients navigate the college application process. This includes preparation for standardized testing, guidance through high school, assistance with essays and applications, and choosing the right college. Their work is always geared towards the specific needs of the individual client as they strive to make this process as stress-free for the family as possible. Visit them today at mptcollegeconsulting.com to learn more about their services and schedule a free consultation.
I need to ask you about Project Next. This is one of the bigger things going on in Jacksonville. You guys are a huge renovation to this ballpark. You're someone who's there every single day, 6 times a week or 6 days a week. Just talk to us a little bit about this project. How big is this for the city of Jacksonville? And how did this really come to be to what it's going to be, soon in maybe a year or two?
Well, I think it speaks to the, the reputation that hopefully our organization has, and the trust that we have built in our community here in Northeast Florida, that this is a public-private partnership with the city of Jacksonville and ASM and a few other different, key partners in major ballpark renovations. The first major ballpark renovation since 121 Financial Ballpark was opened in 2003. And I think you guys have both been here. I think this is a great place to watch a baseball game, in particular a minor league baseball game. The sight lines are awesome. There's not a bad seat anywhere. And the weird thing is that even though it was only 21 years since this opened, it's amazing how things change. And, I have to credit both, the Jumbo Shrimp and obviously the city of Jacksonville, that they wanted to keep this ballpark at the top or near the top in AAA and not just be static. That, hey, it's just a really nice place to watch a game. Like, they want to keep, you don't want to work for a place where they're just content. You want to work for a place, and you want to be a fan of a place where they want to upgrade things. You want to do things better. And so we are in the midst of some major renovations, as you mentioned. So last year was renovating the clubhouses, which is a really important thing for our players. And I do know, the difference between 2022 and 2023, when they got there, was like, whoa, this is really neat. And a lot of it now is fan-centric things. So believe it or not, the number one thing that we get from our fans is fans. They want fans in the seating bowl. And so we added some big fans in the seating bowl. It's a brand new video board that I think is 18% larger. We've taken out the bleachers in right field, and there's going to be a multi-story building out there. We're also kind of reorienting the ballpark because most people park in the lots in the outfield and they have to walk all the way down to the home plate gate. Well, we want to have a brand new welcoming plaza out there as well. So these are things that it was important for us that a significant chunk of, if not all of it, that of the money that we receive from the city, the taxpayer funded money, that it's impacting all fans. It's not just, okay, yes, we are having a club area, but most of this is going to impact every single fan who comes in to our ballpark. And again, I think it speaks to the trust and the relationship we have with our city fans and obviously the decision makers of the city, that they trust us with this money to, improve our ballpark and make it an even better experience than it already is. So it's weird. There's no bleachers out there. It does look odd, but I think the changes we've already seen, and from what I understand, I'm not in these conversations, but what is to come, I'm really excited about it, and I'm looking forward to, I believe it'll be ready at some point in 2025. Opening day 2025 is the goal right now.
Yeah, super cool. I mean, just some of the things that this is promising that you mentioned, new video board, clubhouse is already done. And then this building, I think, is the most interesting aspect of this building in right field that will not only be accessible from the stadium, but also from outside the stadium, which is pretty cool as well. And the quote that I read about it is that it's going to be Jacksonville's newest spot for banquets and meetings. So an attribute that not only baseball fans will enjoy, but also people that maybe aren't going to the baseball game can still enjoy as part of going to downtown Jacksonville. And I think also just speaks to the city as a whole, also signing a new deal for the Jaguars, which if you guys have ever been to Jacksonville, you know that the Jaguar Stadium is within walking distance of Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp Stadium. So I think just a huge buy-in from the city really to continue to develop professional sports in that area, which is great. And then, of course, Ken behind the scenes as well, who's fabulous for not only Jacksonville, but for Akron. You guys have a really great thing going with the city, and have the city's buy into you guys because of everything that you have done is awesome. So, you guys are going to be around for a long time. You guys have been around for a long time. You're going to be around for even longer because of all of these things that are happening, because of the success that you and your team do and everybody else behind the scenes, which is so great. And it's just such a great place to be. I love going there. Kevin's been there. If you guys haven't gone to see a Jacksonville game, go see one, either before or after the renovations. It's a great place to be for baseball, and just in general. Love going there.
Thank you. Yeah, more everybody else in the team, less me. It was some really talented people here. One of the other really cool things about this project is that Janet Marie Smith, unless you're like an architect aficionado, that's just someone's name. But she is the person who worked on Camden Yards. She is the person who worked on the Fenway Park renovations, I believe. And she is helping with these renovations. So who better than that? Like, those are two iconic ballparks. And again, I don't have specifics of it. I'm not in those conversations, but I'm very excited because I love Camden Yards and I love Fenway Park. And if they're anything like this, or if this is anything like those, we are in for a major treat. And it's really cool to see the city investing in, this is downtown Jax, as you said. So our ballpark, the Jaguar Stadium, but also other places downtown. I think anyone who's been to Jacksonville would say that downtown is in need of investment, and the city is doing that, which is really, really cool.
Absolutely. We have one more question to ask about the stadium. Just how it's playing. There's been some discourse, amongst Marlins fans and amongst just minor league baseball fans and followers in general about, is this a hitter's park? Is it a pitcher's park? We know you guys made the wall higher in right field just a little bit ago. That probably will play into it. That was kind of a pitcher's nightmare, I guess, for a little bit, that area of the stadium. So now a little bit easier for them with the wall higher. But how does this park play? You're there, like Kevin said, you're there almost every game. How is this park playing?
used to be a major pitcher's park because it was 420 to center field, which is the deepest center field by a pretty sizable margin. Even with the tall wall and right center with the bleachers, it was still 375. I do think with the renovations, we've brought the fences in, so it's 405 to center, and I think it's 360 to right center now, even with that tall wall kind of all the way out. I think it's more of a hitter's ballpark now. It's still really deep to left center field, but it is significantly shorter to right center, even with that tall wall. You're getting doubles and triples there that were outs before, and you're seeing home runs there that were also outs before. So I know pitchers have always liked pitching here for a long time, and the humidity is a factor as well, obviously, in that. But I do think that overall we've gone from a pretty extreme pitcher's ballpark to certainly one that's more even, but I do think is more hitter friendly now in terms of at least the first month and change with these renovations and how things have played.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Carver, you had the next one. My bad.
Yeah. So that's all we had on the park. We got just two more before we get out. Again, this has been great visiting with Scott Kornberg from the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, our good friend. Two more for you, Scott, before we let you get on with your day. I got a game tonight. Talk about player movement is kind of what we wanted to talk about here. So this past month, the Pensacola Blue Wahoos had both Gabe Kapler and Rachel Valkovich, two new faces in the organization. Familiar names, but new for the Marlins, new in player development. They had stated to Eric when he had asked that they want to have the mindset of being aggressive with challenging players. So we saw it sparingly to start the season, but now that I guess they're getting to see and know the players a lot better in the midst of the regular season, we're seeing it start to happen. We reported yesterday the thing about Noble and Thomas White going up to Beloit. They're also calling up this player, Kiner Benitez from the FCL, who literally just turned 18. So what are your thoughts about that mindset of pushing players as soon as possible, despite age or experience level, and trying to get them to the major leagues as soon as possible?
I think it's smart, and I think we are seeing that even here. Javier Sanoja, I mean, he was an A-ball last year at this time, I believe, and now he's in AAA. And you can even make a case that Victor Mesa, by his numbers, maybe didn't deserve a promotion to AAA. But I think when you look at the intangibles and you look at the skills that he has, that obviously he clearly did, and he's responding. So I think that there's something to that, to challenging guys to see what they do and how they interact. And we haven't seen too much of it yet. I would say Sanoja would be one, and Valente Belloso, who didn't have that much time in AA, would be another, and he'll pitch tomorrow, his second start with the Jumbo Shrimp. But I think if someone struggles, you could always send them back down. And I believe that because if you trust your coaches, that if there is a struggle when you challenge somebody, that you trust them, that they're going to find what's right. So I do think that that's a good thing. I would say that in conversations with our guys in the past, who there is going to be bitterness at AAA, probably no matter what, because you're so close and yet you're so far. But there were probably players who deserved to be promoted and didn't get that chance. And I think that irked people in the clubhouse. And when you're seeing it this way, alternatively, and hey, we're giving you the shot, we're going to promote you, and we're going to give you that chance, I think that players respond to that, and they want to live up to that billing, and they want to prove that the trust and the leverage they were given was well-founded. So we have not seen it as much as you guys have said in low A and high A, but we are seeing it, whereas in the past regime, I don't think we would have seen Mesa Jr. I don't think we would have seen Sanoja for sure. And I think it's a good thing that both those guys are here, and clearly they're playing like they belong.
Exactly, yeah. And I guess I'll ask you this question. You kind of touched a little bit on it. Just AAA in general, the clubhouse, how that could be. Take us through how difficult it could be to manage one of those clubhouses, because you have the case of a Day Myers at the start of the season. He he should have been at the major league level. You have a Max Meyer, he was sent down. You have those type of situations. Just how difficult can it be for people to manage a clubhouse, that type of a clubhouse? And I know you guys have Ryan LaVarnway. That may have been the second episode, and he kind of touched on it a little bit, how difficult it was knowing that, you have a Troy Johnston out there who was the Miami Marlins minor league player of the year. He probably deserved to be up at the major league level as well. You have those type of situations. How difficult can it be to kind of handle those type of clubhouses?
I think that's why it's really important to have veterans like Ryan LaVarnway. There were some, even last year, I think there was some more challenges that you would see. But in previous years, like when LaVarnway was here in 22, I believe, and 2021, like, you just need that veteran leadership of guys who know what it's like, A, to get to the major leagues, who know what a special honor that is and how you should celebrate it, those kind of organizational wins, but B, who also understand what it's like in AAA, because they were not stars, or maybe they were, but they get it. They get this level and the anxiety you feel about being so close. And so with this team, it's very interesting. This is they can play more ping pong together. The clubhouse is very tight, and I think the players have. You maybe have heard it on our podcast. Like Patrick Monteverde said it explicitly, and Victor Mesa Jr. was how close this clubhouse is and how unusual that is for AAA. And there were guys in the clubhouse last year who I think were very bitter, who are not part of this team, and it's just something you're going to have to deal with. And maybe they didn't have the leadership level that this year's team does, and Ryan LaVarnway did in the past. So I think you need veterans like that, and I think you just need good people, right? Like Troy Johnston is a good person. There's a lot of people you would classify as like, this is just a good person. Not to say that they're not frustrated or whatever, because you could still be a good person and be frustrated and be professional. But there are some people I think who maybe took that over the line and complained in the past. So it is a thing in AAA for sure. But so far, this clubhouse has been amazing, and I think that's how you weather the classic AAA anxiety, as well as losing 17 of 20 games and still be in the spirits that they are down there. And I think knowing that this is a new regime too, they understand that this is different than it was in the past. Whereas I think, I'm going to use an example last year. I forget who the injury was, but you had Jake Mangum and Brian Miller both playing very well down here. And instead of calling one of them up, Jonathan Davis is a great guy too. He's one of these veteran leaders that we're talking about on this team. But they traded for Jonathan Davis. And I think there are people here who looked at that as like, man, like, what do these guys have to do? Brian Miller is a really good player, and he's playing great. Jake Mangum, nobody works harder than him, and he's playing great. And I think that rubbed people the wrong way, but it's a different regime now. And I think that is impactful. And I think that this team is really tight. Also speaks to the coaching staff as well, doing their part. And I know this is a really long and rambling answer, but AAA is a tough level, and it's unusual to have this sort of chemistry level that this team has. And at times has had in the past. 2022, I'd put it in there. 2021, I think, in the limited that I got to see because of COVID. And maybe that's why they were, in their little shell, and that helped them a little bit. But this is you need at the lower levels. I think coaches is really important. Leadership is important, but at this level, you need player accountability and player leadership. Victor, Troy, there's several other pieces, Devin Smeltzer, of guys here that just get it. And they do a really good job of teaching the younger guys and managing those, hey, I want to get back to AAA older guys.
And I think that's what really stands out about you guys this season specifically. You guys have those older guys, like a Devin Smeltzer, who has had success at the major league level during his time. And then you have young guys like a Javier Sanoja. So it's a good mesh for the clubhouse, and it's definitely shown, specifically, recently now that you guys are finding more team success there. But to wrap it up here, Scott, I want to ask about the Major League team. I don't know how often you guys specifically follow it, but you were up here in Miami. You got a great game, and it was one of four straight series wins for these Marlins, despite now being 9 games behind, and really more of a retool season. It's looking for this organization. What is there to be excited about? If you're a fan of the Miami Marlins, what are you excited about the Major League team? And you could even talk about some guys at AAA. Victor Mesa Jr.'s call-up, I think, will be extremely exciting for many, as well as, Troy, whenever that ends up happening, because it's not about if, it's more about when those guys will be up here.
I think, for one, this team could have packed it in when they traded Luis Arraez. They were off to a dreadful start, and then you lose one of your most popular players, who is a very, very good player, and there's all this drama going on with – I think that was right about the time where – I don't know if it was you guys or somebody else that reported the Skip Schumacher option and that being voided. That – it really could have gone off the rails there, and it didn't. They were so beat up too. They still are a little bit. But the fact that they said, okay, we lost one of our best players, and there's all this other stuff out of our control just swirling around in the media, and they have responded to that by winning 4 consecutive series, that to me would get me excited that this is a group of guys that cares, for one. Are they going to make a crazy run at the postseason? I don't know. They still are pretty far behind, but you don't know. 4 consecutive series wins, you keep stacking it. It's not like the wild card is – you don't need that many wins, as we saw last year. You could do it. There's a lot of flawed teams in there, and there's no reason the Marlins can't be one of them. That would get me excited that they care. Acquisitions like Otto Lopez would get me excited that this front office can work at the periphery and find pickups like that. That would get me excited about the future, because we know right now that it appears that this team is in sell mode. And so they could change that if they keep playing the way they are. But as of now, I would be surprised if Luis Arraez, I have no information on this, I'm just speaking off the cuff, if you're going to sell in May, it would be surprising to not at least sell a little bit in June and July. So I think that creates opportunity here in AAA. We've talked about a lot of those guys who are really interesting that I think would be excited about. And I think that if you're seeing pickups like Otto Lopez, and you're seeing interesting minor league signings like Elvis Alvarado, who I really think is going to play a role here down the stretch, he's good. And the Padres trade, they got some pretty good pieces back. I mean, I think a lot of people like that return. I'm not an expert on any of those players besides slightly on Usa Go, because I've seen him pitch 3 or 4 times now. Even then, he's still an unknown, I think, in a lot of ways. So, but this is a front office that comes from a place that is very successful. And I think that if they want to do it this way, it stinks to have the short-term pain, especially after the season they just had. It really stinks. And I empathize with any fan for being upset and frustrated by it. But I hope by the limited moves that they've done so far that they're showing that they have a pretty decent idea of what they're doing, and they're trying to build up not just the major league team, but they need to build up the minor league system. And that was neglected considerably in the past. And I think you could see it with the roster last year, even to an extent. This year, there's not a ton of guys here. There's not like a super crazy top prospect that maybe other teams in our league have, like a Durham has playing this week. So it's going to be short-term frustrations. And I get it, any fan to feel that way. But if you're not going to spend the money that the Mets are going to spend or the Dodgers are going to spend, even those teams, a tier or 2 down, you've got to invest in your farm system and your organization and your infrastructure. I know all those things sound like silly buzzwords and excuses and blah, 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 but they are meaningful. We are seeing an impact here. I could tell you from just watching these guys do their work, it is impactful. And then to see the acquisitions they're bringing in already, that would get me excited as a fan, even though they got up to the start that they did.
So, you basically said it perfectly about if you're not going to spend money like these big market teams, which the Marlins are not ever going to do, you have to be feeder system. And like you said, it was neglected. So you have to trade some of your assets to bring back multiple pieces. And I said this on a podcast too, Scott. They could have traded Arias and gotten one star-studded prospect back, but you need more than one guy, right? So you need a lot more than one guy with where the system is right now overall. Definitely have some good pieces, but you need a bit more to get to where the Marlins need to be organizationally. And then, like you said, the investments that they're making in bringing in more pieces of player development. I always point this out that me and Kevin were at spring training last year and we were there this year. There's just so much more in the way of technology, like, on those backfields, that tower that they have, there's like 17 to 18 more computers up there now that they're looking at. There's more equipment that they're putting out to study analytics. There's more equipment that they're putting out to get the most out of these players. There's more that they're putting into strength and conditioning. They're doing it the right way to create an atmosphere that players will be good in for the long term versus just guys that'll be here for a little while, right? And that's exactly what the Marlins need to do. So I totally get it that longtime fans of this team will look at it and say, same old Marlins.
Yeah.
But if you look at it beyond the surface, based on everything that you just said, with how they're investing into players and how they're trying to build it up because they know how to do that and they've done it before, it's different. It's not the same old Marlins. So I think that's what fans need to understand. And there's reason to be excited about that more than anything.
Yeah. And it's, and sorry to cut you off, Alex. It's nothing against these players, but a lot of the guys that they had brought in the past were people who were older, who were off career years that were very unlikely to be repeated. And then they were giving up minor league players in the process on top of that. So it was like compounding a mistake to go after these guys. And here you're going after young guys. Otto Lopez is 25-ish, 24? I forget off the top of my head. But you need youth. You need athleticism. You don't want guys in the wrong side of 30. And then to compound it by giving up minor league players who are interesting. And there's a lot of traits that come to mind. I don't think we need to rehash them and point out specific things. But that to me, just the type of player you're chasing is significantly why it's not same old Marlins. But again, I totally understand where fans are coming from. It has not been easy to be a Marlins fan for a long time. I just want to say that right off the cuff. But I do believe that this front office, this organization is truly trying to take that step forward. It's going to be, maybe they'll keep winning, and that would be amazing. But so far, it's been a tough year, and I get why fans are reacting the way they are. I totally understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. Again, Scott, you're always so great with us. Like, there's no possible way that me and Kevin could possibly do what we do without your help. Every time we need something, we go to Scott. He answers us right away. Game notes every day, roster move as soon as it happens. Like, all that stuff that you do, the attention and detail that you give to your job and the dedication that you have is so admirable. Really, just honestly, is fabulous. Seeing your call up was amazing. Definitely deserved based on everything that we have said today. And we hope to see you back in Miami. I want to see you stay in Jacksonville because I'm the minor league guy and I love dealing with you. But I also want you to get to where you deserve to be. And I think you deserve to be anywhere that you want to be because you're so great at what you do. So again, me and Kevin really appreciate you taking time out of your very busy day, which you just went into, and all the hats that you wear. We appreciate you taking time this morning to talk to us. Really great stuff, really great insight into this team and the Marlins as a whole. And it's fabulous to call you a colleague, a friend, and to have you here today. So thank you so much.
No, guys, thank you. And my apologies. I know I could be slow texting. My apologies. I know you guys have texted me, and sometimes I'm not right away. And for that, I apologize. I have one more funny story for you, if you're willing, about that debut. So you had asked about, was it awesome? And like I said, yes, of course it was. And I had wished that the game would last longer, and it did. And during the post-game show, I texted my wife, I have two very young kids. They go to sleep at 7:30. So they left in the ninth inning and went back to the hotel. And I texted her, "This has been the most incredible day ever." And she replied, and I will preface this by saying my son's name is Sam. She said, "Sam just threw up all over the hotel elevator." So I said a slightly less incredible day, but it really was. My family loved it. Again, thank you to the Marlins, to Kyle, to Steven for truly making me. It was an amazing day. They made me feel like a big leaguer. They gave me the lineup card for some reason. That should have gone to Otto. He's way more important than me. But it was an amazing day, and it is great dealing with you guys. And I'm happy to do it as long as I'm here, or hopefully one day we'll be there even more than a day. But I did want to say it was such an incredible day to even get one. If that's all I get, I'm so lucky.
I think there'll be way more in your future. So again, appreciate you being here. You're so great with us, and thank you for today as well. That's going to do it, guys. That's episode 60, Swimming Upstream. Thank you to Scott again for his time. Of course, you can listen to Scott wherever you listen to minor league baseball. He does every single game with his colleagues and partners there in Jacksonville. And like I said, get to Jacksonville. It is a fabulous place to be. Say hi to Scott. He's fabulous and so friendly and such a nice dude. So thank you to Scott again. That'll do it for today, and we'll see you guys next time on the show.